Then what is a woman?
You don't have to answer that question.
I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
Whose truth are we talking about?
Hi, my name is Nacho, welcome back to the channel, and this video was originally gonna be a review on Matt Walsh's documentary, What is a Woman? But in both light of recent events, I decided to multitask a little bit, and yes, the mustache is gone, don't worry, it will grow back. We're covering a lot in this video, so let's set a good base. First, let's answer the question that Matt made. What is a woman? To me, they are fantastical creatures that sometimes drive us insane. And I'm willing to bet that all 1700 of us in this channel will agree that a woman is a female-born human with two X chromosomes in their 23rd pair, with the 24th making you superhuman.
My molecular genetics is a little rusty.
Based on that, there's no need to expand on other questions like who can be mothers, who goes into the bathroom with a triangle figure on it, or who's allowed to compete against other women. This being one of the topics that truly disturbed me in that documentary. I said it before in my critique on that Dove commercial promoting obesity that I'm very passionate about sport performance, and no matter what twisted reality these companies root their bullshit on, you can't argue against proven facts. And I wish I would have filmed my reaction when this fucking guy said that trans athletes don't always win in sports, because I literally said, cut to Leah Thomas, and props to the editing team at the Daily Wire, cause the compilation of the trans athletes literally decimating their opponents, because let's face it, they're dudes, was very well made, and it actually brought to mind some other athletes of the sort. On top of the fact that what they're doing to high school and university female athletes should be condemned, I mean they're robbing them in broad daylight of their athletic career opportunities, to have biological men in contact sports should be illegal. In fact, some organizations like FINA made it illegal after a very justifiable protest from some of the athletes of the organization. It's not just America, there's New Zealand, even here in Australia they allowed a 220-pound mountain of a man person to compete against biological females, and I would honestly shit my pants if I had the size equivalent of that running towards me at full speed while I'm holding a ball. And the hypocrisy of this whole deal burns right through the cloth they're trying to put over our heads.
Should Mike Tyson, have you heard of him?
Yes, I have.
If he identifies as a female, should he be allowed to enter a boxing match with a biological female?
Well, the short answer is yes, somebody who is trans.
Okay.
After 20 fights, I was undefeated. Only one fighter stood between me and the belt.
You got this chick, she's nothing.
Tiffany Stone!
I remember clearly a case in 2013 when a trans fighter beat a female fighter and left her with a concussion and 7 stitches in her head, as well as breaking the eye socket of another woman. And here's Joe Rogan talking about it.
You're out of your mind. You guys are out of your mind if you think that a man who has been a man for 30 years and has taken female hormones for 2 is the same. You put Brock Lesnar, chop his dick off and put him in a dress. That guy's going to maul through the women's heavyweight division like nothing you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
Because we're built different. And it's just a fact. All these variables that need to be taken into consideration when you're allowing someone to do a sport. And we're not just talking about bike racing. We're not talking about, you know, something where someone...
Non-contact.
Yeah. We're talking about the most contact. We're talking about fucking fighting. You know, there's nothing you do about that. But one thing we can do is we can keep women from getting beaten up by men. And men who transition to being women. And if you think that's fair, you're fucking crazy.
Crazy indeed. You know what else is crazy? That person was inducted into the Gay Hall of Fame for beating up women. I don't want to spoil much of the documentary because it's very interesting and it seems pretty rooted on facts. Netflix. But I also feel the need to mention that it taught me something, like the origin of some of the words that we so commonly hear nowadays, like gender fluidity. And the men who Dr. Miriam Grossman explains were responsible for creating these terms, or were, for lack of a better definition, fucking evil. Just listening to their stories and some of the experiments they conducted on children, which probably violates every single point of the Nuremberg Code, was sickening. And what's even worse is that a lot of scholars, as well as a lot of medical specialists, and I'm using both terms extremely lightly, have adopted these principles. And it's extremely frustrating listening to these people speak, because for someone who claims to have an education, their views land absolutely nowhere. I was watching their mouths move, waiting for a point to be made, which never really came. And the cowardly attitude that these people have when challenged, and the most common response they have when they are faced with a question they can very simply answer, but don't want to, because it would crumble the whole system, is I'm out. We've heard it all before. They feel attacked. You're being X-phobic. you're being intolerant and this conversation is a mistake. Now there's a lot of power in the proper use of words, and this will help me segue into my next point, which is Activision removing Nick Merck's skin from the COD store.
Never do what they did.
Now it's no mystery that during the month of June, America and the majority of its companies simply lose their minds and bend over backwards to receive the dick of what they call women and embrace pride. And an incident in a school in Glendale, where a fight broke out between parents and students labeled as anti-LGBT by the media and supporters of the LGBT movement, made content creator Nick Merckx post this tweet. And I personally don't see anything wrong with it, but because Activision is celebrating pride, they found this to be intolerant and anti-LGBT, so they removed his character's skin from the shop without telling him, and everyone absolutely lost it. He later went on stream to give a fairly reasonable explanation on why he said what he said, while not apologizing for it, and a lot of people agree with him. And to explain why I agree with him, there's a quote that I really like. "Your freedom ends where mine begins." Or to paraphrase this, your right to swing your arms ends just where the other man's nose begins. And I'm sure a lot of arms met a lot of noses in Glendale. But the point is that I agree with Nick because he believes that him and his wife should be the one teaching his kids about that. It's his freedom to do so. If after understanding the subject the kid decides he wants to be gay or transition, I'm guessing that's fine. He should be mature enough to live with the consequences of that decision, which is not something you can say about a lot of young people, especially not kids. Now when someone comes around and tries to challenge that and calls you a bigot for not submitting, you can't really blame the parents of those kids for wanting to punch that person in the face. I'm just surprised no one got shot doing that. Now over at the septic pool of opinions that is Twitter, there's a huge divide on people who support Nick's statement using the hashtag leave the kids alone, very bigoted and hateful, and those who don't. Activision did not back down from the decision, which is creating a huge backlash from their community. I mean, they spat on the face of one of their biggest creators, which in turn made the other two biggest creators of the game, Dr. Disrespect and Tinder Tapman, to drop the game entirely in support of their friend. All because they want to support a very small, loud minority. And the thing I find they're doing wrong is how they use their language. Other than the fact that they make up words on the spot depending on how they feel that day, I even saw a snippet of a politically correct conference where they had to stop every couple of minutes because someone found something offensive they wanted to speak out about.
First of all, James Jackson, Sacramento, he, him. I just want to say, can we please keep the chatter to a minimum? I'm one of the people who's very, very prone to sensory overload. There's a lot of whispering and chatter going on. It's making it very difficult for me to focus.
Oh, he's insane. He's sensitive.
I can't imagine how anything gets done in that world. But for example, another trend that went off after the success of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was that Gwen Stacy was trans and his father, a cop, was a trans ally. Now this was prompted by the fact that the color scheme of Gwen in the movie matches the one of the trans flag, and the animators chose for some reason to put a flag that read "Protect Trans Kids." There's no such thing as trans kids, only bad parents with twisted ideologies. Whether or not that is the case, that's for the author of the character to determine, but what the trans community does is take characters like this and claim them as their own. Sound familiar? They tried to do the same thing with Link, whom, by the way, the creators specified he made him look that way so people would focus on his story rather than his sexuality. But I digress. And they use words like trans ally. Now it might be just me, but if you call something or someone an ally, that makes it a lot easier for people who disagree with your points of view to find you as their enemy, and to find your enemies as their friends. So the idea of gathering support that way pretty quickly backfires, especially when the majority of the motivations to intervene in media and other social spaces make them sound like fucking perverts who are only interested in talking about their fetishes.
And Robin being queer, and like that was what all the fanfics were about. Like Roberto knows what I'm talking about. Thomas, everybody's like nodding.
I'm ready to see a polyamorous relationship between Cyclops, Wolverine, and Jean Grey so that they can
I
all
please have that?
Go fuck yourself.
Now this is a controversial topic. If you don't agree with me, that's fine. I don't hate you because we have different opinions or view of things, but there are some things that are just plain wrong. There's a lot going on in June over at the land of the free speech that affects the rest of the world some way or another, except the Middle East. And there's this image I always like to go back to every time I hear news like this and see both sides of the argument, and it's the 4 pictures that describe how bad times create strong men and women. Strong men create good times, and good times give room to weak men who bring about the bad times. If those pictures were like a map of a shopping mall, I feel like we as a species are somewhere around here. But if you watched this far into the video, leave us a like, let me know in the comments down below which month you think should belong to the other 7 deadly sins. And as always, I've been Nacho, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.